still read a book called Rumble in the Jungle in the Geronimo Stilton Series. Let's go right into it. My name is Geronimo. Hello, dear rodent friends. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Stilton. Geronimo Stilton. I'm so sorry to introduce myself in such a rude way. I'm usually a calm and peaceful rodent with a calm and peaceful desk job in a calm and peaceful office in New Mouse City, the capital of Mouse Island. You're probably wondering why such a calm and peaceful mouse is holding on for dear life as a speeding all-terrain vehicle zooms through a Brazilian rainforest. Actually, I'm asking myself the same thing. For the love of all things cheesy, what am I doing? The rainforest is full of dangerous animals. I'm surrounded by untamed nature. What was I thinking? As you might have guessed, I'm in the middle of another one of my incredible adventures. It started on an evening like any other evening. Hello from Brazil. It was a peaceful evening and I was relaxing at home. I was sprawled on my favorite posture next to the fireplace, sipping a cup of hot chocolate. I put on my cozy slippers and a new yellow robe my Aunt Sweeper had given me. I was listening to classical music and checking my email on the computer. Suddenly, a new message popped up on the screen. Who could it be from? When I opened the email, a photo of a tropical rainforest appeared. In the picture, I saw a ferocious-looking snake, an alligator, and a hungry-looking piranha. Yikes! How scary! There was a message attached to the photo. Hello from Brazil. Are you ready, Cheesehead? Is it real up to date? I hope so because you might not survive your next adventure with me. Haha. Pack your bags. I'm picking you up in a nanosecond. Adventurously yours, Bruce Hyena. A second later, the doorbell rang. Ding dong, ding dong. I jumped out of my chair, choking on my hot chocolate. In the process, I spilled the hot chocolate everywhere, staining my new robe. If that wasn't enough, my eyeglasses slipped off my snout. For the love of cheese, I couldn't see a thing. I heard a voice on the other side of the door shut. Geronimo, are you ready, Cheese Brain? I staggered toward the door, stumbling around in a total fall. Then I tripped on the rug, did a triple somersault, and landed headfirst in my little red fish, Hannibal's glass bowl. How I ended up in Hannibal's bowl. Splash, gulp, one. I jumped out of the chair and choked on the hot chocolate. Ark! I spilled it everywhere, staining my new robe. Oof, slip, crack. And as if that wasn't enough, my eyeglasses slipped off my snout. Where am I? I staggered toward the door, stumbling around in a total fog. Ah! I tripped on the rug and did a triple somersault. Glump! And landed headfirst in Hannibal's bowl. Are you ready, Cheesehead? The door burst open and someone almost ran me over. Are you ready, Cheesehead? The mouse shouted at me. I wanted to ask, ready for what? But instead it came out as glump. Someone grabbed the bowl and I heard him say, You really are a cheesehead, Geronimo. The mouse pulled the bowl off my head and I spit out the water. Then I stumbled around looking for my spare pair of glasses. After I found them, I quickly checked to see if Hannibal was okay. When I was sure my little fish was swimming happily in his bowl again, I turned to see who had caused the trouble. A mouse as massive as a wardrobe and as muscular as a bodybuilder stood in front of me. He was grinning like a rodent who had just heard the funniest joke. He wore mirror sunglasses, but I recognized him immediately. It was my friend Bruce Hyena. Do you know him? He's the most adventurous mouse on Mouse Island. There's even an entire page in the Encyclopedia of Adventure dedicated to him. Okay, this is the directory information of him, I guess. The Encyclopedia of Adventure. Name, Bruce Hyena. Nickname, Hyena. Favorite food, pizza. What he loves best, nature. What he believes that every rodent should follow his dreams. His dream, that one day there will be peace in the world. His fears, absolutely nothing at all. His characteristics, he always survives wherever and whenever. His strengths, leading a group on an adventure. His weakness, he's secretly a mushy sentimentalist, and he has a big crush on Stilton. His favorite sport, he loves every sport, but he especially enjoys parachuting, triathlons, and other extreme sports. Other interests, he reads poetry. Bruce smiling brightly. "Hey, Cheese Puff, are you ready?" he said. "Huh? Ready for what?" I stammered. "There's no time to explain," Bruce said hurriedly. "You'll figure it out eventually. Now enough talk. Let's get busy." As quick as lightning, he turned to my computer, clicked on the email icon, typed in my password. How did he know it? That's supposed to be top secret. And went into my inbox. He pointed to the message with the photo of the snake, the piranha, and the alligator. "Did you see this email?" he asked. "Are you ready?" "I don't know what I'm supposed to be ready for," I exclaimed in frustration. "And how did you get into my email?" "Easy cheesy," Bruce said with a chuckle. "I know your password," she said. "But that's supposed to be top secret," I practically shouted. He waved his cell phone under my snout. "The other day I accidentally, almost accidentally filmed you so you were typing the password. So now I know it. Your password is cheese." "Sorry to say it," she said, "but that's an extremely easy one. You really should choose something a bit more difficult. Don't you know anything about internet security?" But I started to reply, but Bruce cut me off. "No time for chit-chat," he said as he logged into my personal mousebook page using my secret password again. He typed furiously for a few seconds, and when I looked at the screen, he had deleted everything I had ever posted. "You erased everything?" I exclaimed. I was so exasperated and upset that I passed out from the shock. Okay, maybe he also dumped water on it. The third part. It should be in the next page. The most awesome mouse ever. I came to because someone threw a pail of cool water on my snout. I opened my eyes and saw him again. It wasn't a nightmare. Bruce was still standing in the middle of my living room. "Aren't you going to damn me?" he asked. "Aren't you happy I deleted your mousebook page?" "I did it for your own good," she said. "My own good?" I asked, perplexed. "Don't look at me like that," she said. Bruce said. "Your mousebook page was boring. All of your photos show a mouse in a legend jacket with stretched shirts and stuffy ties. You're always sitting in a boring office and you only post about boring things like books and antique cheese runs. Boring! It was like any other mousebook page." But I began to protest, but Bruce cut me off again. "Don't worry," he said with a wild smile. "I have the solution. I'm going to replace your boring old photos with some incredible action shots. Your mousebook page will be awesome instead of boring, and you'll be the most awesome mouse ever." "But I am a boring mouse," I exclaimed. "We've known each other for such a long time, Bruce." "You already know I'm a boring intellectual. I'm a shy rodent who lives a quiet life. I'm not very adventurous or very awesome or even a little bit awesome. I'm just a shy, very frightened mouse." Bruce slapped his paw on my shoulder so hard I winced. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll take care of that," he said. "You'll see. Soon your mousebook page will be full of extremely adventurous photos." Then he grabbed the phone. "Hi, is that you?" he asked. "Yeah, it's me. She's there too? Is everything ready?" "Great," he said to be picked up. "What are you talking about? She's not going to refuse. Haha. I just erased this mousebook page and I'm holding all his archived emails hostage." Keep the helicopter's motor warm, the snake's anti-venom cold, and prepare his last will and testament. In other words, keep everything ready. See you later. He hung up and smiled at me. No one I was talking to. It was an extremely loud noise like a helicopter flying over my house, drowned out his word. In fact, it actually was a helicopter. An instant later, someone opened a trapdoor in the attic, which it didn't even know existed, and came down a rope. Slimy Swiss cheese, a rodent with a bright smile and magnetic-shaped green eyes, landed in front of me with an agile leap. I recognized him immediately. It was Wild Willie, also known as WW. What was he doing in my living room? I didn't have time to answer my own question because another rodent with an even brighter smile and penetrating eyes as black as coal landed with a grateful jump at his side. It was his cousin Maya. I barely knew her. What was happening? Bruce greeted them with vigorous handshakes. They take lots of photos and make sure there are lots of adventures, okay? He told them. Snakes, alligators, spiders, and as long as you're there, scorpions too. They always make for a good show. You can count on it, Wild Willie answered as he gave Bruce one of his super intense looks. Don't worry, by the time he gets back, his rookie will have the most adventurous photos on Mousebook. There'll be photos that will make every mouse wildly jealous. No, if he comes back alive, that is. Before I could squeak a response, Wild Willie, Maya, and Bruce tied my belt to a strange contraption, and in an instant, I was pulled up into the air like a bag of cheese puffs. Zipped out through the attic window, over my roof, and up to a helicopter. As I was hoisted aboard, Bruce shouted to me from below. You'll see, she said. You'll have lots of fun. A trip in the most adventurous country in the world awaits. You're going to Brazil. You came back with the most amazing photos ever. Why aren't you coming with us? I shouted back with a stammer. I can't, he replied in a booming voice. I'm competing in the parachuting world championship. Wild Willie and Maya will take care of you. Relax. You're in good hands. And remember, she said, when they take a picture, smile. Destination, adventure. The helicopter rode toward the airport at warp speed. We boarded a large plane headed non-stop to Brazil. It was a very long trip. You probably know Brazil is located in South America, but you probably don't know how far it is from New York City. Let me tell you, it's really, really far. Wild Willie sat on my right and Maya was on my left. As the plane took off, Wild Willie opened a tourist guide to Brazil and began to read. Hey Rookie, he said, did you know that Brasilia, Brazil's capital, is very modern? It didn't even exist before 1956 when it was built, and it officially became the capital of Brazil in 1960. If you look down on the city from above, it's shaped like an airplane. I tried to make an intelligent remark, but Wild Willie continued without pausing. You know, Rookie, in just a few days, Rio de Janeiro will host the most famous carnival in the entire world. Okay, the information of Brazil. Destination, Brazil. Location, South America. Capital, Brasilia. Area, Brazil covers 3,287,612 square miles. Population, more than 196 million people. Official language, Portuguese. Characteristics, Brazil is the home of many natural wonders, such as the Amazon rainforest, which makes up more than half of the world's remaining rainforest. That's awesome, may I exclaim. It's impossible to get bored in Brazil. The country is rich in man-made and natural wonders. You tour the Iguazu Falls, the Amazon rainforest, and even the Pantano. It's a tropical wetland that hosts lots of different plants and animals. There are snakes, spiders, alligators, and even piranhas. Snakes, spiders, alligators, piranhas, I asked. I was beginning to panic. I want to go home. While Willie pretended he hadn't heard me. Rookie, did you know that Brazil is full of fazendas or farms where livestock are raised and coconut trees, bananas, papayas, pineapples, sugarcane, and citrus fruits are grown? You'll visit my friend Joao and Anna's fazenda. Excited yet? All these facts were making my head spin. After a while, Wild Willie and Maya's voices started to fade, and my eyelids become heavier and heavier. But Wild Willie continued chattering in my ear. Rookie, did you know there are lots of indigenous people living in Brazil, including my friends the Bororo? He went on and on. Maya, on the other hand, was trying to teach me Portuguese, the language spoken in Brazil, but I wasn't listening anymore. I closed my eyes and was lulled to sleep by the drone of the plane's motor. I don't understand anything. I was awakened by a female mouseless voice speaking an unfamiliar language. Bem-vindo ao Brasil, senhor. I don't know what it means. Welcome to Brazil, sir. It was the flight attendant. When she realized I didn't understand, she used hand gestures to tell me I had to get off the plane. We had landed in Brazil. I looked around me and realized I was alone. Well, Willie, Maya, I shouted, panicking. Where are you? I wanted to ask the flight attendant if he had seen them leave, but I didn't know the language. Why, oh why hadn't I learned Portuguese? Maya had tried to teach it to me during the flight, but I had fallen asleep like a fool. Why hadn't I forced myself to stay awake? The flight attendant kept staring at me, so I got off the plane. I went out into the airport and looked around, hoping to find Maya and Wild Willie in the crowd. Where had they gone? I couldn't find them anywhere. The airport security guard kept staring at me, so I felt the airport and started to walk. Okay, the information of it. Brasilia replaced Rio de Janeiro as the capital of Brazil in 1960. The new capital city was built on a massive plateau in the state of Goiás, which is located in the center of the country. The Brazilian architect Lucio Costa designed Brasilia in the shape of an airplane to signify the city's readiness to fly into the future. Every area in the city has a particular function. For example, the city's mayor, monuments, attractions, and government buildings are located within the body of the airplane, while stores and homes are found in the wings. The Brazilian capital was the only UNESCO World Heritage Site city built in the 20th century. I walked and walked. Holy cheese! There was so much to see. Brasilia was a truly marvelous city. I began to search for Wild Willie and Maya in all the public parks, streets, and tourist attractions in Brasilia. I walked through the city far and wide until my paws were so tired and hot they started to smoke. In a final desperate move, I even climbed a very tall television tower, though I have a fear of heights. But they weren't there either. With my tail between my legs, I came down the tower feeling dejected and sad. I was a lonely mouse in an unfamiliar city. What was I going to do? Suddenly, my heart jumped. Through the crowd, I thought I saw a rodent wearing a wide brimmed hat. Holy cheese, it looked just like Wild Willie's hat. I tried to catch up to the rodent, but I slipped on the wet sidewalk. I slid the entire length of the sidewalk, did a triple somersault through the air, and fell to the ground with a loud thud. The ambulance took me to the hospital. I tried to explain what had happened, but no one could understand me. And I couldn't understand them either. Why hadn't I learned Portuguese? After my trip to the hospital, there was one thing I did understand though. I had sprained a paw. It was very, very painful. I also was beginning to understand that I probably wasn't going to find my friends in Brasilia. Remember they had talked about Rio de Janeiro. Maybe that's where they had headed. Carnival in Rio. I bought a plane ticket and took the first flight to Rio de Janeiro. While I was in line to board the plane, I had the sensation that I was being followed. How odd! A surprise awaited me in Rio. The carnival had begun. As soon as I got off the plane, I was overwhelmed by a jubilant crowd singing and dancing the samba as they follow very bright and cheerful floats, moving slowly down the streets. I tried to get away from the crowds, but it was impossible. The dancing rodents dragged me into the thick of things like a rushing river. At one point, I again had the sensation that I was being followed. In fact, I was positive I felt someone tug my jacket. But when I turned around quickly, didn't see anything suspicious. After hours and hours in the throng of rodents, I saw a sign for a hotel. I hurried in and tried to get a room for the night, but no one could understand me, and I didn't understand anything either. Why hadn't I learned Portuguese? I was finally able to communicate with gestures. The following morning, I went down to the hotel lobby to pay for my room, but when I reached for my credit card, I almost had a heart attack. My wallet was no longer in my pocket. The hotel manager was very annoyed. He grabbed me by the ear and said something to me in Portuguese. Even though I didn't understand the language, I could tell he meant something like, "You wanted to have a vacation for free, huh? Dream on! You're going to pay every cent you owe, penny by penny." The hotel manager passed me over to the cook. The cook didn't need any words to communicate. He just showed me the sink full of dirty dishes. I washed and washed and washed for the entire day. But that wasn't all. I had to load the luggage and make all the beds. By nightfall, I thought I had paid off my debt. But the best was yet to come. With a big kick under my tail, the cook sent me back to the kitchen. Kick! He turned on some lively music and began showing me the steps to the samba. "Ame dois, the cook counted in Portuguese. He made me wiggle and sway over and over again. I couldn't figure out why he wanted me to learn the samba, but I tried my best. Too bad I don't have a sense of rhythm as far as the wiggle and sway was concerned. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't do it. When it comes to dancing, I have two left paws." After what seemed like an eternity, the cook dragged me out of the hotel. A huge carnival float was waiting. Finally, I understood why the cook had taught me to samba. I was going to have to ride on the float through one of the carnival parades, dancing the samba the entire time. The cook urged me to get onto the float. What else could I do? So I climbed on board, and the float began to move into the crowded streets. I danced the samba as well as I could, but I was still really terrible. How embarrassing. The crowd seemed to enjoy my dancing though, because they threw coins at me as a tip. What good luck! Maybe now I can pay for my hotel room and get out of Rio. What beautiful waterfalls! Luckily, it was the last day of the carnival. The following morning at dawn, my debts were paid and I was free to go. I counted the coins I had received as tips for my terrible samba dancing, and it was enough to buy an airplane ticket. I decided to leave Rio to look for Wild Willie and Maya in another plane they had talked about, the Iguazu Falls. Full of hope, I headed to the airport and bought a ticket to Foz do Iguaçu International Airport. Once I arrived there, I boarded an overcrowded bus brimming with tourists. When we finally got to the falls, I was overwhelmed. Holy cheese, what a fabulous sight! The water from the river tumbled down from incredible heights, forming swirling eddies below. The noise the water made was a deafening roar. I was speechless. For an instant, I again had the feeling that I was being watched. I had the distinct impression that someone was following me. But when I looked closely at the tourists around me, everyone looked perfectly normal. Was the cheese slipping off my cracker? I scrutinized each face in the crowds around the falls, hoping to find Maya and Wild Willie. No luck! I quickly checked the parking lot, looking for them there. No luck! Then I peeked into every store, coffee shop, and souvenir stall I could find. No luck! I even checked the bathrooms, but there wasn't even the shadow of my two friends. With a sigh, I went back to the pier and walked along the footbridge where I could admire the falls a bit more closely. I stopped at a lookout point to enjoy the beautiful scenery. I was just squeaking loud about the falls and someone accidentally bumped into me, and I tumbled into the water. What a beautiful waterfalls! The rushing current swept me under the falls. I tried desperately to get to the surface, but as soon as I came up, The enormous smell of the water pushed me right under again with a tremendous crashing noise. It sounded like thousands of jackhammers drilling at the same time. I finally came to the surface, gasping for air. I found myself in a calm pool at the foot of the falls. I bobbed in the water, looked around, and I saw a boat coming closer to rescue me. I was saved! I raised my arms and waved them wildly. "I'm alive!" I shouted. "I'll be fine. Everything is okay." But at that very moment, one of the rescuers threw a lifesaver at me. It hit me on my head so hard and knocked me under the water again. Glub! I came up for air and whispered, "Great shot!" Then I fainted. What good luck! When I came to, I found myself in the hospital bed again. A polite doctor tried to tell me something, but I couldn't understand anything she was saying. Why hadn't I learned Portuguese? Como vai as coisas? Como vai as coisas means, how is it going? Through hand gestures, the doctor made me understand I was a very fortunate mouse. I survived falling over the It was a fall with only an enormous bump on my head. It could have been much, much worse. After a few hours, I was discharged from the hospital and found myself again roaming the streets alone. I was miserable and didn't know what to do. Where were Wild Willie and Maya? Suddenly, I remembered that in the plane they had spoken about the Pantano, the largest tropical wetland in the world. I even remembered that their friends Joao and Anna lived on a fazenda in the Pantano. Holy cheese, why didn't I think of it sooner? Wild Willie and Maya had to be there. I went back to the airport to buy a ticket to Cuiabá, the largest city and capital of Mato Grosso, the state where the Pantano is located. Unfortunately, I didn't have any more cash or my wallet, but I had become so good at making myself understood with hand gestures that I was able to pay for the ticket directly from my bank account. After a scary ride on a shaky plane, I landed in Cuiabá. As soon as I got out of the airport, I was immediately surrounded by a group of rodents vying to me by tour guide. Unfortunately, since all of my cash was gone, I had to settle for a lift on a truck packed with sheep, and the ride wasn't even free. I had to pay for it with my watch. The stinky truck full of sheep bounced along the Transpantanera, the long dirt road that crosses the Pantano. The stench was atrocious. After a couple of miles, the truck driver stopped and made me get off. Using hand gestures, he made me understand that he had arrived at his destination, so I had to proceed on paw. I tried to complain. After all, I had given him my watch to pay for the ride, but he didn't understand me. Why hadn't I learned Portuguese? So I began walking as the sun set on the highway. I had been walking an hour or so, and I was losing hope of ever finding the fazenda when I saw Rodin on a horse riding towards me. He was tall and strong with shiny fur and eyes that sparkled. I sputtered out some words, trying to make myself understood. "My name is Geronimo Stilton," I squeaked. "Fazenda Joao Ana." He laughed loudly and pointed to himself. Diego! By gestures, I understood he was one of Joao and Anna's friends. He also lived at the fazenda. What good luck! After all my adventures, I couldn't believe my good fortune. Finally, something on this trip was going right. Diego wheeled me up onto the horse behind him, and together we rode to Joao and Anna's. When I was introduced to Anna, I was delighted to find she spoke English. I was finally able to ask someone for some news about Wild Willie and Maya. But to my destiny, my friends are not at the fazenda, and Joao and Anna haven't heard from them either. I was so depressed I could have cried. Anna understood immediately and tried to cheer me up by offering a delicious treat she had prepared with her own hands, manjar branco. Manjar branco is coconut pudding, a traditional Brazilian dessert. The whisker-licking good pudding immediately put me in a good mood. Manjar branco. Ingredients for pudding: 4 cups whole milk, 1 cup coconut milk, 1 cup sugar, a half cup cornstarch, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. Ingredients for syrup: a half cup sugar, a half cup water, 1 cup pitted dried prunes. Combine the whole milk, coconut milk, sugar, cornstarch, and vanilla in a small pot. Within a dough soap, place the pot on the stove on medium heat and mix the ingredients with a wooden spoon until the mixture thickens about 15 minutes. Grease the bending pan with a drop of oil and pour the pudding into it. Let it cool and sit in the refrigerator for 3 hours. To make the syrup, combine the sugar, water, and dried prunes in a small pot. Within a dough soap, bring it to a boil. Reduce heat and simmer on low heat for 15 minutes. When the pudding is set, carefully invert it onto a plate. Garnish with the syrup and enjoy sharing your dessert. Geronimo, why don't you stay here for a couple of days and rest? Anna asked this as I ate the manjar branco. You could give us a hand with the chores on the fazenda, and while you're at it, you could also learn a little Portuguese. I'd be happy to teach you, and the fresh air and healthy living will be good for you. I gladly accepted the invitation. Thank you, I told Anna. Actually, I'm very tired, and I really must learn some Portuguese. And yes, I'm sure the fresh air will be good for me. But as usual, I didn't know what I was in for. Fresh air and healthy living. Grunt, squeak, kick. The following morning, I was awakened at dawn to milk the cows. I didn't know how to do it, so I got a swift kick in the tail. I weeded the garden, and the bee stung me on the tail. I looked for eggs under my chickens, but they picked my paws. I gathered the oranges in the fruit grove, but I fell down the ladder and into a patch of poison ivy. I couldn't stop scratching. Ouchie! I brushed the horses, but one stomped on my left paw. By nightfall, I was so exhausted, I fell asleep on top of a fence. So much for fresh air and healthy living. Maybe it's his chores, I guess. I think there will be more on the next page or not. Famous! At the fazenda, I learned to appreciate the hard work that goes into farming and the beauty of the countryside as well. Thanks to Anna, I finally learned a little Portuguese. I felt so much more confident. Armed with this knowledge, I was ready to start off again in search of Wild Willie and Maya. Anna and Diego suggested I look for them in the Bororo villages in the heart of the Pantano. I told Anna I wanted to leave the next day. Before you go, we'd like to take you to a restaurant, she told me. What do you want to eat? Well, how about some local food, I suggested. Anna and Diego exchanged an odd look. Are you sure? Anna asked. Do you really want to taste local food? I was puzzled. Of course, I replied. Why wouldn't I? They both cheered happily. Then vamos! Vamos means let's go. And vamos, Diego explained. And they jumped into their all-terrain vehicle as if they were being chased. I still had my paw on the door handle when Anna shifted into gear and looked off like a rocket. I clung desperately to the handle as we sped off. I opened my mouth to yell, but a mosquito flew in and I started coughing nonstop instead. So do you understand why I was clinging for dear life to an all-terrain vehicle in the middle of the Brazilian forest at the beginning of this book? Anna's vehicle zoomed down the dirt road, which was a nightmare of potholes and mud puddles. Holy Swiss cheese! I could hear her laughter through the window. I love to drive on dirt roads, Anna squeaked cheerfully. Vamos! The radio was blasting samba music and the car seemed to sway to the rhythm. I finally spotted a restaurant. Phew! Anna abruptly stopped in front of it. I flew off the handle of the car straight into a signpost. I hit it with a loud thud. When I climbed down from the signpost, I realized it read, "Beware, it bites." I didn't have time to ask for an explanation because a short rodent with shiny oil whiskers pushed me inside the restaurant. It was Anton Chefskraft, the owner. I noticed he surreptitiously winked at Anna and she winked back. Then he looked me up and down and turned to Diego. He mumbled. Do you think he can? He's got to, Diego answered. Anton Shifrat shrugged and mumbled. You'll see. He shimmied to the kitchen to the rhythm of the samba beat playing on the radio and returned with the steaming dish in one hand and a strange entry in the other. What did you bring me? I asked curiously. Be quiet and eat, he ordered. So I began eating as the three of them stared at me. I felt very embarrassed. Why are you staring at me? I asked. What am I eating? Anton just grinned. Yummy, not bad, I said as I finished eating and licked my whiskers. In fact, it was really good. So tell me, what did I eat? The first dish was piranha soup, Anton said with another grin, and the second one was alligator tail. I was about to faint, but I didn't have a chance. Before you leave, we absolutely must take a keepsake photo, my friends exclaimed excitedly as they pushed me out of the restaurant. He dragged me to a shop next door. It was long and narrow with lots of glass display cases along its walls. I thought it was an odd place because even though it was a store, I couldn't figure out what it sold. The owner, a small and skinny rodent who was constantly laughing, came to meet us. He started a long explanation in Portuguese. He spoke very fast, so I couldn't understand a thing. At the end, he began giggling and repeating one word. Jiboya, jiboya, jiboya. Then he stretched out a hand in one of the display cases and took out a huge snake. It was the longest snake I had ever seen. Frozen feta, so that was the jiboya. He placed it around my neck like a scarf as everyone talked all at once very excitedly and happily. Then he pulled out a camera and took my photo. I turned pale as a slice of mozzarella. How do you say I'm about to faint in Portuguese? I asked Anna. Finally, after taking about a million photos, they freed me from the snake. I won't get lost. The following day at dawn, the time came for me to leave and continue the search for Wild Willie and Maya. Diego and Anna explained how to get to the Bororo village deep in the Pantano, and they pointed to it on my map. It looked very simple and straightforward, and it wasn't too far from where we were. I figured I could walk there in only a few hours. I said my thanks and farewells to my friends. Geronimo, are you sure you'll be able to find the road to the village? Anna asked with a serious face. Of course, I replied. I'll be there for nightfall. But are you sure you won't get lost? Diego asked. The rainy season has just ended and some plants may still be underwater. You might get confused. Of course I won't get lost, I replied. I have the map you gave me and it looks very simple. They just shook their heads. Well, just be sure not to be in the Pantano after sunset, Anna warned. It's dangerous. I won't get lost, I replied confidently. I'm very confident. I said goodbye and walked boldly down the path leading into the Pantano. I had really become an adventurous mouse. Wild Willie and Maya would be so proud of me. I entered the forest and every so often stopped to check the road on the map. There were all sorts of amazing multicolored birds all around me. I decided to take a few photos to show my dear nephew Benjamin when I got home. I was so taken by everything that I didn't notice the sun beginning to set. No time at all, I found myself alone in the dark, in the heart of the forest. It was exactly what Anna had told me to avoid. Only then did I understand how foolish I had been. I had been overconfident in my abilities and I hadn't listened to those who loved me and had tried to warn me. As it got darker, terrifying sounds filled the night air. I took refuge under a tree and began to sob. I got lost, I wailed. I'm alone. I was so foolish. It was useless. No one could hear me. I would have to spend the night alone in the wild forest. But then a second later, the foliage around the tree parted. A tiny face with a curious expression peeked out from between two leaves. My name is Calibri. The face belonged to a tiny mouselet. She wore a necklace of shiny red and black berries, and multicolored feathers were woven throughout her fur. Her bright eyes peered at me with a sincere and honest gaze. She spoke to me in a language I didn't understand. When she saw my puzzled expression, she repeated it in Portuguese, and I understood. My name is Calibri. I smiled and replied in Portuguese. O meu nome é Stilton, Geronimo Stilton. Anna's lesson sure had come in handy. Calibri smiled again and invited me to follow her. She started down a long path that took us deeper into the forest. We walked through the dense foliage by the light of the moon as my new friends proudly explained the secrets of that extraordinary natural habitat. We walked and walked until we came to a small village in a clearing. It was very quiet and everyone was sleeping peacefully. The Pantano was the largest tropical wetland in the world. Most of it lies within the Brazilian states of Mato Grosso and Mato Grosso do Sul. The name Pantano comes from the Portuguese for pantano, which means swamp or marsh. During the rainy season in the Pantano, the forest is almost fully submerged in water. A great variety of animal and plant species live in the Pantano, making it one of the richest ecosystems in the world. For this reason, the Pantano is considered a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Come out, everybody! Calibri suddenly shouted. Geronimo has arrived. Sleepy mice began to emerge from the leaf-woven huts. They looked at me curiously. I noticed that all were either very young or very old mice. How odd! Where were the adult rodents of the village? A wise-looking elderly rodent came toward me. We have been waiting for you, Geronimo, he exclaimed. You were waiting for me? I asked, surprised. Really? Why? We have been waiting for you, he repeated. You are Geronimo, Wild Willie's friends, correct? Is Wild Willie here? I asked excitedly. No, but several days ago, I received a letter from him saying you'd come to help us, he told me. That's why we've been waiting for you. I was puzzled. How could I help these mice? I asked for an explanation. The old rodent led me to a spring of clear water and began his story. Our people have lived in peace since the dawn of time. And since the dawn of time, our people have guarded our most precious treasure, the heart of light. It is a crystal shaped like a heart that emits the purest and most marvelous light. Unfortunately, news of this wonderful crystal reached the ears of Jake Darkmouth. He's a dishonest rodent who's the leader of a band of ruffians. He and the scoundrels who work from him chop down trees in the forest to sell the wood. They replace nature with concrete streets and buildings. What happened to the heart of light? I asked anxiously. Once that day, Jake Darkmouth came and asked to buy the crystal. He wanted to break it into pieces to make souvenirs for tourists. We refused to sell it to him because the heart of light is part of our traditions. Bororo. The Bororo people are only one of many indigenous populations in Brazil. The Bororo live in the state of Mato Grosso in villages that are made up of houses arranged in concentric circles. In their language, Bororo means village court or round village. At the center of each village, there's a place where sacred ceremonies are held. This place is called Bedo, which means house of men. The Bororo typically adorn themselves with splendid, multicolored headgear made of feathers. Jake Darkmouth didn't give up. The rodent continued with tears in his eyes. One night, he and his thugs arrived with an enormous helicopter and they stole the crystal. They captured the rodents of the village who were trying to defend the heart of light. Darkmouth now keeps them as prisoners, forcing them to cut down trees. How terrible, I exclaimed. Now I understand why your village is made up of only older mice and very young mouseless. He nodded and then continued the story. A few weeks ago, I wrote a letter to my old friend Wild Willie and asked for his help. He has come to our defense several times before when we were faced with injustice. He replied and told me he would send you a mouse named Geronimo. He looked at me carefully. You must be a mouse who's very strong, very cunning, very courageous, and also very adventurous. Jake Dormouse and his hench mice are very, very bad rodents. Don't hammer that mouse. I tried to correct my new friend. I hate to disappoint you, but I'm neither strong nor cunning, I told him sheepishly, and I'm not at all adventurous. Most of all, I'm not courageous. In fact, I'm a real scaredy mouse. Don't be so modest, answered the elderly mouse. While Willie told us you would deny it, but I know the truth. He winked at me. I know you're the boldest, bravest mouse on earth. What could I do? He didn't believe me. The rodent called Calibri over, and she showed me to an empty hut and wished me a good night. Help! Unfortunately, it was not a good night at all. It was the custom of the rodents in the village to sleep in hammocks. But when I tried to lay it in mine, it flipped upside down. I fell and bruised my tail. Only after many painful tries did I finally figure out how it worked. In fact, once I got the hang of it, it was very comfortable. But unfortunately, I still couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of the wise old mousey that said. I couldn't understand why Wild Willie had told him I was courageous. But I had to help my new friends. I was their last hope, and I couldn't disappoint them. At dawn, I gathered up my courage, said my goodbyes, and headed in search of Jake Darkmouth and the Heart of Light. Before leaving, I took Calibri aside. I'll do the best I can, but I'm not sure I'll succeed, I whispered to her. You've got to know I'm not what you think I am. I'm just an ordinary mouse. She smiled at me. Here's my advice, she said. Have faith. You'll see that the forest always helps those who defend her. With those words in my heart, I entered the forest alone. I roamed for 3 days but found nothing. I got more tired and hopeless as I went. And I remembered Calibri's advice. I could use some help, I whispered. Nothing happened, so I raised my voice and repeated myself. I could use some help, I said. When nothing happened, I screamed as loud as I could. I really need help! Please help me! An instant later, something tugged on my sleeve. I turned and saw a monkey. It seemed to be pointing to a path in the forest. Amazed, I began to walk along the path. An instant later, something tugged on my sleeve. I turned and saw a monkey. It seemed to be pointing to a path in the forest. Amazed, I began to walk along the path. When I came to a crossroad, I saw a tapir. It seemed to be pointing to the left with its snout, so I turned to the left. After walking a bit farther, I was sure I was lost, but then I saw a multicolored butterfly swooping close. It fluttered its wings and moved toward the road. It began walking down the road, and a yellow armadillo crossed in front of me, forcing me to bear right. Then a jaguar appeared before me and gave me a huge slap with his paw, putting me back on the right track. I continued on until sunset when I heard a tremendous metallic noise. I hid in the shrub and peeked out into a clearing in the woods. I gasped. It was speechless. Bulldozers and tractors were uprooting trees, and an enormous glimmering crystal sat in the center of the clearing. Suddenly, a large berry landed on a branch above my head. Crystal, 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 oh, the parrot squawked. Then it disappeared into the forest. I was left hidden in the foliage, unsure of what to do. I peered into the clearing again and singled out the mouse who seemed to be the boss. It had to be Jake Darkmouth. Holy cheese, I was scared just looking at him. Then he spoke. I am personally going to be the first to break this huge crystal, he said loudly. I'll use the freak piece to make myself a souvenir keychain. He grabbed a huge hammer. Go, boss, go, boss, go, boss! Everyone around him chanted, "Go, boss! Go, boss!" He wound up and was about to take a huge swing with the hammer. I had to do something. I had to defend the Heart of Light no matter what. I put my fears aside, jumped out of the bush, and ran toward the crystal, throwing myself on top of it. "You'll have to go through me to get to this crystal," I cried. I closed my eyes and waited. Suddenly, I heard a deep voice. "Everyone stop!" the voice shouted. My eyes flew open. I knew that squeak. It was Wild Willie. It was really him in the fur. He did a karate move as he yelled at Jake Darkmouth. "Don't hammer that mouse," he cried. Don't hammer that crystal." Maya appeared behind Wild Willie. Before I could get over my surprise, she took out her whip and yanked the hammer out of Jake Darkmouth's hand. Behind Maya, I saw a group of Bororos. It was the young mice from the village. Wild Willie and Maya had freed them. Jake Darkmouth realized he was surrounded. "We give up," he said. "You won." "I saw the whole thing," Maya told me. "Geronimo, you were so brave." Thank you," I stammered. My snout turned purple with embarrassment. Then I took a step backward and tripped over my own paws. How mortifying. "You came back alive, Stilton." I returned to the village with Wild Willie and Maya, who carried the Heart of Light. When we arrived, Calibri ran out to greet us. "Geronimo is back," she shouted, "and Wild Willie and Maya are here too. They have the Heart of Light. Hooray!" The head of the village came toward me and thanked us formally. "Hooray for Geronimo!" everyone shouted. "Hooray for Wild Willie!" "Hooray for Geronimo!" everyone shouted. "Hooray for Wild Willie!" "Hooray for Maya!" Wild Willie, Maya, and I spent a few more days in the village, but soon it was time for us to go. I bid my farewell to my new friends. "Thank you for everything," I told them in Portuguese. "I will never forget you. Come visit New Mount City. I'll be happy to host you in the same wonderful way you hosted me." During our flight home, I went over all the Portuguese words and expressions I had learned during my incredible adventure. When the flight attendant wished me a good trip, I answered her in perfect Portuguese. Anna's lesson had really made me look good. When the plane landed in New Mount City, my family was there to greet us. My sister Dia, my cousin Trap, and my dear little nephew Benjamin. Obviously, Bruce was there as well. He gave me his usual crushing bear hug. "Welcome home, he said," he exclaimed. Wild Willie and Bruce exchanged a knowing glance. "Incredible," Bruce said as he smoothed his whiskers. "The greenhorn came back alive. Go figure." I was proud of myself. "If I only knew all the adventures I lived through," I told Bruce. "They were extremely adventurous adventures. You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Unfortunately, I don't even have a single photo." Bruce winked at me. "Don't worry about that," he said. "Here are the photos." But who took them?" I stammered. "I was alone the entire time." Bruce knocked playfully on my head. "Hello, is anybody there?" he asked. "Haven't you figured it out yet? You were never alone. Maya and Wild Willie were with you all along." Extremely adventurous adventures. Playing to the door of a speeding vehicle. Eating piranha soup. Free falling over the Iguazu Falls. Posing for a photo with the Jiboya. Hiking toward the Pantano. Spending time with new friends. Saving the Heart of Light. "Knock knock, anybody there?" I was stunned. Had all of my adventures been organized by my friends? But I stammered. Bruce knocked on my head again. "Knock knock, anybody there?" he asked. "He abandoned you on purpose so you could survive all on your own. You danced the samba, lived through the falls, ate piranha soup, and had a huge snake around your neck. Aren't you at least a tiny bit grateful?" Wild Willie chuckled as he stroked his whiskers. "With all the effort we put in, of course you should be thankful. A rookie like you could never have gotten such beautiful adventure photos all by himself. If I hadn't taken your wall, Bruce cut him off with a sharp elbow to the ribs. Shh, Mia scolded him. Suddenly, everything was clear to me. You took my wallet and left me stranded in the foreign country, I shouted. How could you do that to me? Some friends you are. Bruce slapped me on the shoulder. Yep, she said. That's right, he said with a chuckle. And that makes us some of the best friends you'll ever have. We worked hard to make sure your challenges would be more exciting. Mia opened her laptop and turned the screen toward me. Check it out, Geronimo, she said. Your new mousebook page is up. The site appeared on the screen full of the adventurous photos of me that my friends had taken during my trip. I also saw the comments that were beginning to pour in from all over Mouse Island. They were from friends and relatives. And from rodents who had read my books. Congratulations, Geronimo. Well done, G. I didn't know that you could be so courageous, Geronimo. And you're really an adventurous mouse, Geronimo. A little while later, my cell phone began to ring. My friends were all calling to compliment me on my incredible adventure. I turned to my travel companions. Thank you for all you have done for me, I said sincerely. I know you did it with the best intentions in the world, even if at the moment I didn't understand it. The result is amazing. My new mousebook page is so much more exciting and bold than my boring old one. And thanks to all of you, I've discovered a wonderful country and made fabulous new friends. There was a trip I'll never forget. Go figure! It was then I decided to write a book about my Brazilian adventure. It's the book you're reading right now. I hope you like it. Soon after the book was published, I received a phone call from the famous Brazilian film director Oscar Malso. Senhor Geronimo, I read your book and I liked it a lot. You showed what an adventurous country Brazil was. I thanked him for the generous compliment. So, Senhor Geronimo, what do you say about having the leading role in a film based in Brazil? I was shocked. But I'm not an actor, I replied. Even better, Senhor Geronimo. Even better, he said with a chuckle. I want you, only you, and just you, because you are a very normal mouse to become a very adventurous mouse. And that's how I ended up back in Brazil filming a movie. The best part was that I got to see all my Brazilian friends again. When the film was done, there was a screening in New York City. It was incredibly successful. I learned so many things from my adventure in Brazil. First of all, I learned that sometimes an unfortunate event can turn out to be extremely fortunate. If I hadn't been left in Rio penniless, I never would have gone into dance to samba during Carnival. And I also learned that nothing is impossible with the help of true friends. What would I have done without all those rodents who welcomed me with so much warmth and hospitality? Finally, I realized that real danger is not finding oneself with a snake around one's neck, but living a boring, monotonous life without ever trying anything new. Luckily, I have some of my best friends in the world. Ruth, Diana, while Willie and Maya knew what I needed even better than I did. An amazing adventure. Thanks for reading all about my fabulous trip to Brazil, and I'll see you next time. Okay, that was the book I read. Thank you for watching, and I hope I can see you in the next one. If you want to see more Geronimo Stilton series and other audiobooks videos, please consider subscribing it. And even if it was long, I really have lots of thanks for you if you watched the whole video. Even I can't watch all of those. So, really thank you, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.